This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, John Halpin.
Hey everybody, it's John Halpin. Welcome to the Friday, September 8th edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by Fanball. Derek VanRiper is with me today, and Derek and I are going to be doing this every Friday afternoon. We're starting this at about 5:15 Eastern today, sort of getting the injury reports. They're not totally wrapped up, Derek, but there's not much going on, as we talked about before we started recording.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably make adjustments as the season goes on. Like if there are several late afternoon injury reports we're waiting on, we can probably adjust. But it's week one. Yeah. Teams are reasonably healthy. There's still a few tough decisions that need to be made. Still some things to get excited about. I mean, if you're a Kareem Hunt owner today, you're doing backflips because he looked great. Aside from the TDs, like you could just take that out. The usage for Kareem Hunt is where you're feeling great, because any concern that he'd be in like a 60-40 or 65-35 split with Charcandrick West, that was pretty much squashed with the usage pattern last night.
Yeah, that guy, he got all the work he could handle. They threw to him deep. He just got everything. If you drafted Kareem Hunt last night after the fumble, that game was everything you could have possibly wanted from him. And not just the production, like you said, but the usage.
The roller coaster of emotions, too. I mean, give Andy Reid credit for not being a caveman of a head coach and burying Kareem Hunt on the bench for 6 weeks for coughing up a fumble on his first carry. They had the stat on the game last night on NBC. He had one fumble in his entire career at Toledo, and that was with heavy usage, and he recovered it himself. So to lose one on the first carry in the NFL and to bounce back like that, really impressive. But part of that's just Andy Reid sticking with his guy, and clearly he sees a pretty big talent gap between Hunt and Charcandrick West, who amazingly comes in and breaks off a 21-yard TD run. He had 2 touches. He had 1 catch, but his only carry was a 21-yard TD run when the Patriots were pretty much demoralized late, and he looked kind of good and elusive doing it.
Yeah. Other things I want to talk about with the Chiefs. Actually, one other thing. Tyreek Hill. Okay, so you look at Tyreek Hill. So I was a Tyreek Hill skeptic in the summer. And you look and you say 7 for 133 and 1. Wow, that's a big night. You know, the touchdown, 75-yard touchdown, that was a complete busted coverage, right? It wasn't any skill on Tyreek Hill's part. He basically started going and everybody got confused, and he was 20 yards behind everybody. Other than that, they threw to him, but it wasn't like he wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't all that impressed. Maybe I'm just a grouch about Tyreek Hill, but I thought the numbers are a little misleading.
They are. And the Tyreek Hill is a wide receiver one crowd, of course, will be noisy today. And the people that are looking at him and being skeptical for good reason. I mean, he's 5'10", 185. He wasn't a prolific pass catcher in college. I know he played at West Alabama because he transferred there. There's a lot to still look at with him and say, okay, you know, take away the big play, which you take the best play away from every player every week, and it strips down production a lot. He still doesn't have prototypical number one wideout traits, his route running, hands, all those things. But what he does have, and what he's had all along, is a head coach in Andy Reid who we have come to overlook, I think, as one of the better offensive tacticians in the league. And we saw that in some of the formations. There was the one play where they had Travis Kelce line up behind Alex Smith. There was a little bit of a motion scenario in the backfield. The direct snap went to Kelce. Kelce faked a pitch to Tyreek Hill and just kept it himself and ran up the middle. Stuff like that, right? Design runs for Hill. There's going to be all sorts of wrinkles that put Hill in situations where he gets mismatches. And I think the thing that gives him a higher floor than most big play threat type guys, the lower volume wide receiver ones around the league, is that he is so explosive that if someone does make a mistake like the Patriots did last night, he will burn them for it. He has that sort of top end speed. So I'm with you where I see it more as like, all right, that could be the best game he has all season, but he could have plenty of other good ones, even if they're low volume, good games.
Right. All right. We're going to look back at the Patriots now. And I think the first thing we need to just absolutely confirm is that it's time for Jimmy Garoppolo to start in New England, right? We're clear on
Clearly.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Brady's done.
No touchdowns, completion percentage under 50. I mean, come on, get him out of there. He's toast. All right. Anyway, if there was only a laugh track here, Derek, that would be a lot better. But you know,
we can set that up for you.
We can.
Yeah, we can make your L button do a laugh track thing. I've got some software for that.
It reminds me of I actually had some friends texting me today saying, the Patriots look terrible and the defense is awful, and I'm sitting there going, they'll fix it, right? Do you remember a couple of years ago? It was 3 years ago, maybe, when they played in Kansas City and got blown out, right? Mm-hmm. That it was a 41-0 or something. I mean, they just got destroyed, and everyone went, "Oh, maybe Brady's done, and these guys, the dynasty's over." And all that. This is how I feel this morning. I'm going, come on already.
Brady missed throws yesterday that he doesn't usually make. First throw of the game, right, was that one to Dwayne Allen on what looked like kind of a wheel route sort of thing. It wasn't a wheel route because he's not a running back, but he was wide open. Brady missed him by several feet. He had a couple throws to Cooks that were off. I mean, I think part of it was the lack of separation. Part of it was Brady just being a little bit inconsistent with his throws. He had the TD pass to Gronk that got overturned.
Right.
That was really close to being a great catch for a TD. And that would have changed the complexion of the entire game, realistically. I guess that one, they ended up scoring on that drive anyway. But there were just a few moments where Brady didn't look like himself, and I don't expect that to be the case. Most likely, they're still figuring out how they want to adjust without Julian Edelman. And we know by now to trust Belichick to scheme in a way to make that work. Where I think they might be a little bit screwed, though, is Danny Amendola leaving this game with a head injury, which is probably a concussion. And he's had a couple of those before. So the guy that can do some of the things that Julian Edelman does underneath might be out for a game or a couple games. I mean, cumulative effects of concussions could cause that absence to be longer. So they may have to tinker a bit more than we expected if Amendola does, in fact, have a concussion and has to miss a few games, because I think he was part of the equation for replicating some of Edelman's routes. And then, Hogan got locked down on the outside. I think he saw a lot of Marcus Peters. So Hogan will be more effective against lesser number one corners, but he had a tough matchup last night.
And Hogan played 73 snaps, everybody. It's as silly as it sounds to talk about selling high and buying low after one game of week one. I wouldn't mind getting my hands on Chris Hogan right now, somehow. You can't get him off waivers. But after last night, I looked, and I know the production wasn't good, but I'm going, you know what? I'm still in here. The usage was fine with me, I thought.
They play the Saints next week, too.
They play the Saints next week, yes.
You want a get well game, you get the Saints defense in week 2, and everyone's going to have the narrative saying, well, the Patriots are mad. They got embarrassed on national TV. That doesn't matter. I mean, they're just a team that bounces back well from a loss, because Belichick probably didn't sleep last night and has probably been scheming for the Saints in the hours that have passed since that game ended.
Running backs, Team Gillislee's happy, definitely, and it's interesting because we talked about the blunt roll. That was the shorthand for what we thought he was going to do. Kind of was. I mean, goal line guy, got it done. The numbers weren't all that impressive otherwise, but I mean, 3 touchdowns, and in that offense, you're going to get a lot of touchdown opportunities, short yardage.
Yeah, the blunt roll with an E. I think James White carried the ball a lot more than I would have expected. Mm-hmm. I thought we'd see a little more Burkhead. I don't really know what the future holds for him. I think you're almost like in a forced hold situation with the other backs. And by that, I mean White and Burkhead. I mean, Gillislee with 3 TDs. People are going to be excited about owning him right now. But like Deion Lewis barely played outside of special teams. He's probably a cut in 12-team leagues just based on how it is right now. And I say that knowing that the Patriots can flip things around pretty quickly. I mean, I just think Lewis is currently on the outside looking in. It would take an injury most likely to one of those 3 guys ahead of him for him to have any sort of useful role, even in deeper, like full-point PPR leagues.
All right. And by the way, the running back snaps, James White, 43, Gillislee, 24, 15 carries on his 24 snaps. Burkhead 10 and Lewis 6. They threw to Burkhead three times. One was a little bit of a deep play that he almost caught. I'm still, after last night, I can't say I was happy as a Burkhead owner in a couple of leagues, but I kind of went, you know what? I'm not. I mean, like you said, you're going to hold, but I'm not a disappointed hold at him. I'm going, you know what? I'm not discouraged yet with that guy. I think I'm okay.
They lined him up out wide at least once, right? So stuff like that is kind of encouraging because it just means they like him as a fit for their personnel groups. And they think he can do some different things. Now, we may be chasing minimal production. We may have 2 games all year where Burkhead actually does something that we like as fantasy owners. And depending on when those games happen and where we're at with bye weeks and injuries, who's to say that he's even in the lineup for one or both of them for a lot of people. But there was enough there to wait it out for another week and see what happens.
All right. Everybody, we need to thank Fanball for sponsoring the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Check them out now, fanball.com. Social media for us, Derek's at Derek VanRiper. I'm at Halpin37. You can also tweet us at RotoWire. And player updates, if you're looking for injury news, at RotoWire NFL. I know Tim's working on that. We've got a lot of information there. So if there's any news to be had, get it at RotoWire NFL on Twitter. And check us out on Facebook as well. All right, let's talk about injuries. Odell Beckham Jr. is clearly the first one. You know, it's funny. Tim Heaney and I did a podcast Thursday morning, and Odell Beckham Jr.'s status was in doubt, and, you know, he was questionable. And Tim and I are going, come on, he's playing. It's Sunday night. He's practicing. Come on, everybody. What's going on? Well, it doesn't look quite so certain right now. The Giants are saying game time decision. It's Sunday night. Oh, my God, what a disaster.
Yeah, it's not good for Beckham owners. I mean, the injury, based on what Jeff Stotts has said, looks like a high ankle sprain. And we're not far enough away from it to where I'd really want to lean on Beckham this week, even if the Giants do try to trot him out there at less than 100%. So I'm a little skeptical that even if Beckham is active, that we're going to get anything that resembles his usual snap count and usage. So I think, given that it's a Sunday night game, you know, you do have the 2 Monday games, so a few more options on the board to pivot to if he's declared inactive. You want to think longer and harder about some of those players that are going to go earlier in the day on Sunday if those are your best alternatives to Beckham in week 1.
Okay. If you do want to wait, Shepard, I don't like Shepard this year. I mean, if put it this way, if you do want to wait and if Beckham's out, Shepard's role certainly increases. So that's fine. And Dallas's defense is no good. So Shepard's probably a decent play, right?
Oh, yeah. Shepard becomes like a GPP target in DFS, and he becomes like a streaming wide receiver 3 type if Beckham's out, because Marshall should draw any top corners when Beckham's out. And I think it makes Evan Engram more interesting, too. I mean, Ingram's kind of on the fringe for season-long usage at tight end. We don't know how exactly they're going to use him right away, but he's not a typical tight end. He's basically a receiver who lines up like a tight end, and that's what makes him so exciting because he's got a lot of speed and good size. All
right, otherwise, let's see. In that game, if Cole Beasley at wide receiver is an option, he's not a sexy option, but he's an option. I mean, he's probably going to catch 4 passes, right? So you could do it.
Yeah. He caught 8 last year in the opener against the Giants, and I think he had 4 in the second meeting. So the floor is pretty good. If it's full point PPR, that's fine. Non-PPR, I would try to do something else because I think Cole Beasley's TD odds in any given week are pretty low based on the way they use them.
Right. If you're flexing, and these are all guys who the guys I'm listing here are lower than 50% on Yahoo ownership. Shane Vereen, maybe if Beckham's out, maybe he gets more work.
That's really interesting. Like if you said Vereen versus Beasley for a flex pickup because you shuffled some other receiver in for Beckham and that was the spot that you had left over, and PPR kind of helps them both evenly. I think I would go Vereen. For some reason, I know Dallas may have a tough matchup on their hands. The Giants' defense is legitimately good.
Yes, very.
Dez was quiet last year in the 2 games against the Giants, and he's cheap and daily. So I've been trying not to have too much exposure to Dez Bryant this week. But man, I look at the Dallas offense, and not much has changed. They got Zeke this week. They're probably going to be decent. If the only way I can see it really being a case where Vereen gets heavy volume, though, is if Dallas opens up a big lead.
Yep.
And I'm not really seeing that because the Giants defense is just that good. Like Eli could be a pick machine for the first half. And I think the Giants defense is good enough to kind of overcome that.
I think you might be right. But I think they might be good enough. If the playing field was level, they might, but It's so funny how 2 weeks ago we looked at this game and we said, oh, the Giants are at full strength and the Cowboys won't have Zeke. And now it's flipped with if Beckham's out. I don't know how the Giants are going to score if they don't have Beckham.
Yeah.
I legitimately don't know how they're going to score more than 10 points.
Beasley over Vereen makes sense to me because I don't trust the script to be such that Vereen gets enough usage to overtake him. I don't think he's going to run the ball enough this year. Are we sleeping on Paul Perkins, or does Ben McAdoo not like him? Like, what's the deal with Perkins? No one's really talking about him. He doesn't have a lot of competition for carries. I know the pass catching role is mostly going to be Vereen, but Perkins looked pretty good with the increased volume down the stretch last season. Dallas is not a great defense. This should be a pretty good spot for him.
I agree with you. And it's so funny. I have been spending the summer kind of looking at Paul Perkins going, I don't know. I mean, they can't block. And I hate the line, and I don't know how he's going to run. And it's funny, this morning I started looking at this, and I sort of took another look at, I've seen it before, but then I looked at the game logs again. And he ran pretty well down the stretch with the same bad offensive line. And volume-wise, in the final 4 games of the season, he had 62 carries. That's plenty. I think especially if Beckham's out, Paul Perkins is, either way, because if Beckham's in, then maybe it opens things up a little more. But I don't know. The Cowboy defense is bad enough that Paul Perkins is probably a better option than I would have initially thought.
Yeah, if you look at Perkins as an NFL prospect and let's say Jay Ajayi as an NFL prospect, when those two guys were coming out of college, they're both 5th round picks. Ajayi's been in the league 1 year longer. Ajayi didn't look amazing before what happened last year. Like it just doesn't seem that far fetched to me that Paul Perkins could be the kind of player that helps us win leagues this year. Like that, and yet I had this belief that as soon as I had one share in an important league, I've got Perkins in the Stopel Law Firm league. I'm like, okay, I got enough exposure. One league's enough in case it busts. But in my mind, I can't come up with a scenario that explains why he busted unless he gets hurt. Like skills wise, he's got to be better than Orleans Darkwa.
Yeah,
and I think he's better than Wayne Gallman too.
But they're so bad. The blocking's so bad.
So maybe it's heavy boxes if and when Beckham is out. Maybe it's bad run blocking. I don't know. The Dolphins' offensive line's not that good though either. Like I don't think there's that much of a difference skills wise in Perkins today and Jay Ajayi going into last season.
Wow.
Doesn't mean he's Jay Ajayi. It just means it's like this is the kind of situation that people could have taken advantage of, and I don't know anybody who's been the Paul Perkins guy. Maybe they got to be out there.
Well,
but,
there's
seriously
the people that talked about the athletic metrics and things like the elusive scores and things like that liked him. But you're right. There doesn't seem to be a Paul Perkins guy.
No, he didn't have a blazing 40 time. Kareem Hunt didn't either. Le'Veon Bell didn't years ago, and the 40's kind of stupid because you don't run in straight lines in football anyway. But the broad jump was good. Vertical jump was poor. Okay, not great athleticism, but I don't know. Like people seem like they're sleeping a little bit on Paul Perkins. If the Giants offense is as good as some people think it can be, it just stands to reason that Perkins will be part of a rising tide lifts all boats narrative in the Giants offense.
All right. The other two guys I had on the list of possible flexes, and we're reaching here. Alvin Kamara. I know, right? Well,
I love the player, don't love the situation at all. I don't trust Sean Payton with Mark Engram. I wonder how much he'll run Peterson because it's the Vikings, if that matters at all. And game flow, the Saints are dogs. I guess that does actually bode well for a guy like Kamara. But Mark Engram catches passes too.
Yep, he does.
And I think sight unseen, I want to know how much the Saints actually trust Alvin Kamara in pass protection, because they throw a lot, and pass protection is going to be extremely important for Kamara to get and stay on the field over the course of the season.
All right, last one, Jamaal Charles. Could you do it?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with Mario Puig this draft season, so my brain has been wired to be convinced that Jamaal Charles still has it. And then I saw him play against the Packers in the preseason, and it passed the eye test. It looked good.
Yeah.
The knee thing for the injury report doesn't seem to be serious. We'll know Saturday for sure. It's a Monday game. Compared to, say, like Shane Vereen, I'd rather use Charles. I'd rather use Charles than Kamara. I think I'd play Charles over Cole Beasley.
All right.
Because I can see Denver with Trevor Siemian. They're not going to open things up that much through the air, so they're going to run Anderson and Charles a fair amount. And I think that team could actually sustain 2 running backs at times in games they keep close. And they're going to keep a lot of games close because their defense is still good, even if it's not elite anymore.
All right. Of all the players we mentioned, Shepard, Beasley, Engram, Vereen, Kamara, Jamaal Charles, pick one.
Shepard would be the first choice, and that's under the construct that Beckham is either out or just very limited.
Got it. Okay. Next up in the news, ESPN reports close to a full workload expected for the returning Le'Veon Bell. Any concerns at all? Any worries that, not that you wouldn't start him, but let's say if you're playing him in daily and paying the freight for him, are you worried about James Conner getting a half dozen carries?
Increasingly, I'm not, and I think the reason behind it is if the Steelers give James Conner a dozen carries because the Steelers are up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and if they're up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, Le'Veon Bell probably did something to help them get there. Sure, Ben could hit Martavis Bryant and Antonio Brown for a few TD passes or something like that, but the usage for Bell is usually so stable that I'm not going to sweat it too much. I mean, we know he's a dynamic pass catcher. They don't even have a specialist to get on the field for occasional third down work. Like their personnel behind Le'Veon Bell. James Conner's a nice potential player.
Yeah.
But for a contending team, for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, I'm surprised the Steelers don't have a little more behind Le'Veon Bell right now.
Yeah, well, that's why Le'Veon Bell wants 2 salaries.
He's doing the work of 2 players.
He's doing the work. Was it? He used to be. I don't know where. It was a Letterman quote. He's doing the work of 10 men or something. All right. Full workload related. LeSean McCoy had an illness. Seems like he was back to practice today. There's nothing else doing for Buffalo. Nothing. I mean, LeSean McCoy is it. He is as it as any back anywhere, right?
He is. Jordan Matthews is supposed to play. He fully practiced today, and he's got that chest injury with a chipped sternum, I think was the official diagnosis of that. It sounds very painful. Here's the thing about the Bills. They put some incentives into McCoy's contract that reward him for the extreme workload he's about to try and shoulder. I trust the volume, trust him just fine against the Jets. The thing that I think could make LeSean McCoy's value collapse, and he's fine for week 1, so you're happy with him right now. If Tyrod Taylor gets benched or gets hurt, you take away the mobility at the quarterback position. Teams can play the run a lot differently. The weapons in the passing game are uninspiring. If they're breaking in Nathan Peterman for a good chunk of this season, that hurts the value of LeSean McCoy. I know he didn't have a lot to work with last season, but I think a big part of his surge in the yards per carry department comes from the threat that Tyrod Taylor brings as a runner himself. Yeah. And without Taylor, that goes away.
And also, with the new offensive coordinator, apparently there's a lot more under center, which changes the offense too, even with Tyrod. So
yeah, I don't like the sound of that. I mean, Shady's a great player. He's a very good player, but his situation has only gotten worse in the last 3 weeks.
Yep, absolutely. All right, everybody. Most of you have tried daily fantasy sports games. I know Derek and I have been just talking about it. And, sometimes you have fun playing. You love the competition. And, you just lost, right? You lost too much. But it's a new season. And you don't have to play against all the sharks anymore, right? You don't have to quit. You don't have to bail. You don't have to say, I'm not playing daily fantasy anymore, because it's supposed to be fun. So we're going to tell you about a new approach to daily fantasy sports, the Fanball number at fanball.com. Here's the Fanball difference. Your Fanball number identifies your skill level. It ensures that you play in contests against players at your skill level. If your Fanball number is, say, 35, you're not going to be playing against experts rated in the 80s and 90s. They have their own contests at fanball.com. Every player has a Fanball number, and every contest has a Fanball number. So you can find a contest rated around that 35, knowing that it'll have players just like you. They've leveled the playing field with the Fanball number at fanball.com. Have more fun and a better chance to win. Check that out, fanball.com. I'm afraid that my number would be something like 12. Derek.
Well, I think 20 is what you get just for signing up and spelling your name properly. So you're probably starting at a 20.
It's like the 400 SAT score. You just take a test, you get a 400. All right.
Just here. That's where you start. And if you curse out the proctor of the exam or something like that, then you drop below 400. But I don't think anyone's ever done that. Hopefully no one's ever done that.
Hopefully not. All right. Bengals running back coach says Hey, we're going to use the hot hand. So we've got Jeremy Hill, we've got Gio Bernard, and we've got everybody's summer flavor of the month, Joe Mixon. This information, I was going to say, what do we do with this information? But it's pretty much what we thought we had, right?
You know what I think this is? I think when coaches have veteran players in the backfield and they don't have I don't want to say stones, but I just think when they don't have the ability or confidence or willingness to just go out and say, the young guy we drafted is better than the two guys we have already, they have to tell the media something. And they say, oh, it's going to be the hot hand. And they know full well that most likely, if you give a series to Hill and a series to Bernard and a series to Joe Mixon, there's a pretty good chance that Mixon has the best series and you can go to Mixon more. And then they can make that part of the plan. They can give Jeremy Hill the first series and feel okay about, making the rookie wait. And it doesn't hurt their chances to win that much if it's only one series where they do that. And it gives them an out. It gives them an out to keep playing Jeremy Hill if he plays well. And it gives them an out if Jeremy Hill doesn't play well to run Bernard and to run Joe Mixon. So this is a situation for me where it's like, other than Jeremy Hill hanging on to a vulture role, because he's done that pretty well, it's really the thing he's done the best of the last two seasons, I don't think the Bengals need to be committed to giving him much of a workload at all. And all along, I've just thought, you're going to draft Joe Mixon, you're going to play him, right? You're going to take heat. You're going to take a lot of heat for drafting Joe Mixon because he punched a woman in the face. Right. That happened. So if you're going to draft him, you're probably going to play him. It's only a matter of time. So whether they chop up the workload smaller than they should for a week or two, it's anyone's guess. But I don't think it's going to take long for Mixon to lead that committee in Cincinnati.
Okay. I think I agree with you. But here's the thing I've been thinking about with that. I mean, I've been saying all along that, with all the touchdowns that Hill's scored, I don't think they're just going to bury him. But you would think that the talent should win out, and Hill doesn't seem to have the talent we once thought he did. Gio, on the other hand, if his knee's right, he's a good back. He's not a 3-down, workhorse kind of back. But he's a nice player. He can catch the ball. He runs well. He was always, even though Mixon can catch the ball better than Hill ever could, if Gio is healthy, I think Gio's passing down presence could continue the way it was before. I mean, the Bengals used to do, it was almost a 50-50 split with those two guys for a couple of years. And if Gio's right, I don't know that he just kind of gets phased out so that Mixon can get, 20 touches a game. That's the thing that would worry me if I own Mixon. I mean, look, you can't expect, the number of running backs that you think you're going to get 20 plus touches a week, you can count on one hand. But I do think that if a healthy Gio could muck this up more than Hill now, which over the summer I thought might be more Hill. Now I'm starting to think it's more Gio.
Well, I think Mixon and Gio, they still complement each other well, even though Mixon can catch passes. Having two backs that can catch passes is a good problem because teams don't know what you're going to do. They really don't. I mean, they don't know if you're just bringing a guy in to dump the ball off or if you're just bringing him in to block or what exactly it is. So when you have that, hey, this is our only guy who catches passes thing, that tips the hand a little bit. So that's a good thing for the Bengals. They have two guys that can do that well. I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised Bernard's as far along as he is in his torn ACL recovery. I'm good for him. That's right. Great. I think the peak workload for him is right around what we saw in 2014 and 2015. Close to 40 catches, maybe 50 at the high end, about 150 carries. And I think Hill's going to get phased out. He's had back-to-back years below 4 yards per carry. That to me is just that's a sinking ship. And it might not sink in September, but I'd be surprised if these three guys are all healthy, if Jeremy Hill's anything better than third on the depth chart once we get to the middle part of the season.
All right, next up, small one. Not that anyone was worried about Julio Jones. The Bears, good front seven, not so much behind that. And Prince Amukamara's out. Julio Jones, jackpot if you didn't have it already. I mean, is he your number one wideout for the week? I had him at 2. I think I'm moving him up.
Yeah, I think you can make a case for that. I mean, it's basically him versus Brown. Both of those games are games where the favored by at least a TD. So there is some kind of pull away potential. But the thing I continue to like about Julio is the offensive coordinator change may lead him to more opportunities in the red zone. Mm-hmm. I mean, that could be the thing that actually works in his favor. We know the overall volume is going to be there. Mukamara being out, just a little bump up in value for this week. What kind of team do you really think the Bears are? I mean, are they going to be the 5-11 team that scares good teams when they're at home, or are they going to be the team that, because their offense just can't sustain drives, whether it's a Glennon or Mitchell Trubisky, the defense, will start games strong and just fade in the second half because of fatigue? And teams like Atlanta, Green Bay in division, those teams will eventually just start popping the big plays as the game rolls along.
I don't know, because I don't think their offensive line is that bad either. So I keep looking, and it's funny, I actually had to do some picks this week, and I picked the Bears. I said I want to look for an upset, and I picked the Bears. And maybe it's stupid not to believe in the Falcons. I still believe in them. Obviously, I think there's going to be a little bit of a backstep, and they're not one of the best offensive teams in the history of the NFL, or they're not going to be again. But I don't know. I don't think the Bears are terrible. I think they will. I think you're right. I think 5-11 and scaring teams with close games is fine, but I think they could pull out a few of those games too. I don't think they're horrible. I just think they're kind of below average, but they'll be frisky. And maybe I'm giving John Fox too much credit, but I think they could be trouble for people. They could be sort of a scrappy, annoying team.
No, it makes sense. And if that's what they do, Jordan Howard's going to help them stay in a lot of games. They might run Tyreek Cohen even more than we think. It might be plenty for both of those guys, because after Kendall Wright, who's second on that team in targets for you, week to week?
Is it Kevin White? Ideally, it's Kevin White. If it's not Kevin White, they got a bigger problem than they thought, because it has to. I mean, they're going to try to make it Kevin White until it doesn't work.
And it may not work very quickly. I mean, they don't seem, maybe publicly they express some confidence in Kevin White. It doesn't seem like they are real confident he's going to be healthy and productive all year, which is too bad. He was a great player at West Virginia. His final season there was awesome. But man, two fractures in the leg, he just might not be the same guy anymore. Right. And they're going to force feed Kendall Wright. Deion Sims might catch 35 passes. Yay. Marcus Wheaton might get some volume. There's just nobody else there that I really like. It's just Kendall Wright or bust right now for me with those pass catchers. And I wonder if that means we're going to see a lot of dump offs to Howard, and maybe even some dump offs to Tyreek Cohen to get him out in space.
Yeah. Kendall Wright's super cheap at DraftKings, by the way, $3,200.
It's like an automatic play in cash, and then the gamesmanship, like how big is the tournament you're playing in as far as whether or not you're going to fade them.
Yep. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I agree. It's a really good for 3,200 at full point PPR. That's hard to avoid that one. All right. So the Rams defense seems like an obvious stream with Andrew Luck out for the Colts, but we still have no Aaron Donald. Are the Rams still an obvious stream?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, I think Tolzien's going to check it down. The running game for the Colts isn't good. The Colts defense isn't good either. So the Rams may be able to tee off with the pass rush on Tolzien. Like, that's the other appealing thing. Even without Donald, I think there's enough on this defense talents-wise to where they can, under Wade Phillips, become a really good week-to-week defense. At least a streaming option when they get a good matchup like this one. They're at home. I think there's enough there that I like, where I'm comfortable with the Rams as like a top 10 fantasy defense this week.
Yeah, I have them. Let's see. I'm third.
Yeah. Okay. You got them pretty high.
Third or fourth. Rams or Bills? Because I have Rams third, Bills fourth.
I'd probably go Bills, but it's not by much.
It's close. All right. So the Browns, do you agree the Browns are going to be a little friskier this year, right?
Yeah, the Browns are weirdly kind of like the Bears.
Yeah.
Slightly better offensive line, 2 running backs instead of 1 workhorse right now, based on the way Crowell and Johnson shared last year anyway. Young quarterback they're going to right away. So I like that about the Browns compared to the Bears. I mean, Glennon might be competent, but why not just give Trubisky the experience? Like if he's close to ready, just turn him loose, see what happens. I don't know what to make of the Browns defense. No Myles Garrett this week. Joe Hayden suiting up for the Steelers. That's going to be weird to see if you're a Browns fan, I bet. And, I just don't know if the defense is going to be okay or if it's going to be something better.
Right.
I know they're going to be, a Greg Williams defense where they're going to be hurting people because that's what they do. But are they going to be able to keep good teams like Pittsburgh from scoring? Debatable, right? So, man, I just look at that as a team like the Browns. There are reasons to be more optimistic about them, and yet I don't find myself gravitating to throw Corey Coleman into my lineups for this week right. or anything like that. And maybe I should. Like maybe there's enough there where I should take the chance on a Brown or two in my lineups.
But how? Okay, so thinking about Roethlisberger on the other side with the home road splits that we talk about all the time. Does Myles Garrett's absence change your mind at all about Roethlisberger? Because it looked like Garrett was going to step in and make an impact pretty much right away.
Yeah, I mean, it changes the pass rush quite a bit right off the jump. And I think with Roethlisberger's home road splits, I'm pretty sure he's gone into Cleveland and put up some big games the last couple of years because Cleveland's been pretty bad. How much does opponent really factor into that for you? Like when you look and say, okay, we know he's bad on the road, but is he always bad on the road? Like the end of the 2015 season in Cleveland, 349, 3 TDs, big game at Cleveland, right? Like that's great.
Yeah, but Cleveland has been so bad for the last few years, and it seems like they're not so bad anymore.
Right. Oh, they're better. Like they are improving. Last year in the opener at Washington, which wasn't an easy assignment. At least I didn't think it was. Roethlisberger, 300 yards, 3 TDs, and a pick. It's pretty much his only great game on the road.
Right.
Everything else on the road last year was pretty bad. I guess he had Indy, where he only threw 20 times, but went for 221 and 3 scores. So Cleveland's still, to me, kind of in the prove-it mode, where if I'm a Big Ben owner, more likely than not, I'm still rolling him out there this week, even though I think he's got 4 on the road in the first 6 weeks. He's probably only going to start one more road game for me in the next 6 weeks. This is one where I trust him.
Gotcha. All right. The last one here, Cardinals-Lions, which could be a fun game. The over-under is a bit high. DM Buchanan out for the Cardinals, which is kind of a key loss for them. And they all, Calais Campbell not there anymore. Maybe the defense not as good. And it's starting to make me look, when I saw Buchanan was going to be out, it made me look at the Lions running backs again. Do you like one, both? Who do you like out of those two?
It has not crossed my mind to use a Lions running back in any context, season long or DFS this week.
Come on.
It just hasn't. I think Riddick picks away at the value that Abdullah should have. I'm worried about Zenner in short yardage situations.
Yeah.
And they just love to throw it so much. They just love to be the slow tempo pass first offense, which against Arizona seems dumb. I mean, I think Arizona still got a good pass rush. The secondary strong. This just looks like a bad matchup for the Lions overall. And if they fall behind early, Abdullah's going to catch some passes, but they are not willing to give the dream on Theo Riddick as a pass catching back. I know he does that pretty well because he's a converted wide receiver.
Yep.
But yeah, Ameer Abdullah, like just a guy that I have no exposure to anywhere, and I'm not choosing to have exposure in DFS.
Okay. I do have exposure to Ameer Abdullah in DFS. So
it's not bad. The price is low. I mean,
price is low. He caught opening game last year before he got hurt. He caught 5 passes.
Yeah, it's certainly in the what could go right folder. Mm-hmm. But I don't look to the Lions very often for a what could go right scenario.
That's a good point. All right, everybody. You've been waiting for this since February 6th. I know I've been waiting. Football season's here, and there's no better way to get closer to the game you love than with DraftKings 1 week fantasy football. To celebrate, what are we going to do here? DraftKings is hosting a $100,000 contest this Sunday that's totally free to enter. And if you draft the perfect lineup, you can win $1 billion. Now, I want you to know, I don't think you can win $1 billion because my entry's already in. So, I might. I think I'm the favorite to win the $1 billion. But if I don't, you, Derek, you and everybody else might have a chance. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe some weird thing will happen to your lineup, like right before lock or something, and then we'll all have a chance.
All right, with draft, what's my lineup here? I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna tell you what my lineup is here. Actually, I have. Is this the one I have Carson Palmer in? I think it is. It's the one I have Carson Palmer.
Don't do that to yourself.
Why? I mean, I'm trying to win $1 billion. What am I going to do? Pick Aaron Rodgers? Everybody's going to pick Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, but you can pick Aaron Rodgers. I mean, against the Seahawks, he might be a little lower owned than he would be ordinarily. Everyone's going to pick Todd Gurley. I know that. Todd Gurley's going to be very chalky.
I agree. You know who might? Paul Richardson. Don't tell anyone.
He's your guy?
Yep. He is. He's cheap too. Well, he's not super duper cheap. He's $3,700, which is not as cheap as Kendall Wright. But yeah, against that Packers secondary, that's the hill I'm dying on right there is Paul Richardson. If I'm going to win the $1 billion, he's my guy.
I keep waiting for Russell Wilson to have an actual good game against the Packers. I know he threw a strike in overtime to beat them in the game. The Packers had 20 ways to win in the playoffs a couple of years back. But Russell Wilson's game log against the Packers is actually pretty bad.
Yeah.
I can't look at it and say, well, that's going to continue because their secondary is generally pretty generous.
Yep.
And, Wilson with health can move the pocket really effectively. If you're not getting good, consistent pressure, you're not hurrying those decisions. I think he can burn you. And I think a healthier Jimmy Graham this year. Graham was good enough last year when he was 90% or whatever he said he was. But yeah, I think Seattle's very dangerous in that matchup, even though Wilson hasn't really carved up the Packers before.
All right, everyone. With DraftKings, there are many ways to play. You can choose between public contests with big cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against a group of your friends. DraftKings also has beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill levels. The best part is you get to draft a new team every week without any commitment. You won't have, if you get exposure to those Lions running backs that Derek talked about, you can just ditch them next week. You don't have to worry about them anymore. So get to DraftKings.com now and use promo code WIRE to play in DraftKings free contest with $100,000 in total prizes this Sunday. And if you draft the perfect lineup, you can win $1 billion. That is promo code WIRE to play for your shot to win $1 billion this Sunday. The contest is totally free to enter. Why wouldn't you try? DraftKings, the game inside the game. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Derek, I want to let you know that if I win the $1 billion, I will do the podcast with you Monday morning.
That's really nice because if I win the $1 billion, I will definitely have someone show up to do the podcast. And I'm not going to leave you solo. I will not put you in a bad spot. But somebody else will have to be here because I will still be intoxicated from celebrating.
I was going to say I might be drunk or hungover, but I'll do it. And
right.
I'm never going to do another one.
I'll still be awake. I won't go to sleep. If I win the $1 billion, it's going to be amazing. The party's going to be the best party of all time.
That's it. You got to throw it together on short notice, though.
Oh, I don't. I think if you send a mass text to everybody in your phone and just say, hey, I just won $1 billion, meet me here, like 10% of your phone will be there in a few hours. Even people that have to jump on a short flight will probably show up.
You're probably right. Some people go, who is that again? I don't care. I won $1 billion. That's great. All right. So speaking of that Seattle Packers game, Thomas Rawls listed as questionable, but it sounds like he's going to play. Speaking of guys you don't know if you should start, could you start anyone there? I'm still tempted to start Procise in PPR because I think he's going to be the third down guy. But everybody else, this is a total wait and see, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I'm making the call as a Friday afternoon, Procise in full PPR seems fine. There's a few ways he could be involved enough to be at least a useful flex. I think Lacy gets the bulk of the workload this week. They're saying it's a high ankle sprain for Rawls. So if he plays, maybe he's active because they don't have a lot of running backs on the roster, and he's an insurance policy if Lacy leaves the game early or something like that. I don't expect much usage for Rawls. I was going to start him in a deep league, and now I think Matt Breida is cracking a lineup for me in week 1, so that's a heck of a start to my season. But
what?
Lacy, it's what happens when you punt a running back spot and something doesn't catch between draft day and week 1. Matt Breida happens, but Eddie Lacy. Okay, at one time Eddie Lacy was like a number 1 overall pick in fantasy leagues. Like that happened once, and I didn't realize that was in Green Bay. But Seattle's offense is good. They sought him out, not paying him a lot of money. They don't have to play him. But if Rawls is dinged up and Procise is just more of a pass catcher than a between the tackles guy, Lacy gets a chance to go up against Packers, his former team. Pete Carroll seems like a narrative guy. Even if he wouldn't come out and say it outright, that he'd want to get all rah-rah and like pat Eddie Lacy on the back afterwards and give him the game ball because he rumbled for like 70 yards and a touchdown on 15 carries. Like that seems like a Pete Carroll fairy tale, doesn't it?
It does. You want this psychological game that Pete Carroll would want Eddie Lacy to get all fired up about beating the Packers?
Yeah, I mean, like
silly as it sounds, I think you're right.
It's just what I'm not the king of the narratives, but I just think with Rawls being a little hobbled, Procise being more of a pass catcher, this could be one of two games where Eddie Lacy gets into the high teens and carries. And I think a lot of weeks when they're both healthy, it's going to be a nightmare trying to figure out whether it's Lacy or Rawls.
But he didn't look very good in the preseason.
Yeah, he got more comfortable after a little while. I mean, that line's bad. Like that's the one thing that I think is kind of interesting for both players. I mean, I don't think Rawls is really like a burner either. I know he's faster than Lacy. I mean, if you had him like run in a straight line next to each other, great. But I don't know if Thomas Rawls' per carry numbers are going to ever look anything close to as good as they did as a rookie. I mean, I think he's more of like a 4 yards per carry kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And Lacy behind that line might be closer to 4 yards per carry. But the whole thing with their offensive line, they think that Russell Wilson, as a mobile quarterback, can kind of help the running backs, and they don't have to pay a premium for offensive linemen. So it's a great experiment. But anyway, I think if I'm playing one, it's Lacy. And yeah, there's some narrative